Hello and welcome back to the podcast. Today we are going to be diving into anxiety and how you can reduce this in your life. And I am someone who has experienced anxiety and I have experienced panic attacks. And so helping you overcome this or at least reduce your anxiety is going to be something that I really, really value and want to help you with. So I don't have to tell you what anxiety is if you have it. If you have it, you know exactly what it is. It is horrible. And anxiety is what happens to your body through your nervous system that keeps you on high alert for danger. So let's talk about this today so that you can start to implement different strategies and different tools to help you manage this. Now, if you've been to therapy or you've talked to a doctor about managing your anxiety, a lot of times people will prescribe you medication. Medication can be extremely helpful for reducing anxiety. I myself was on Zoloft. I was on Lexapro. And I've taken CBD oils, like different things like that to help me in a physical way. And those kinds of things may be necessary. So I don't want to diminish the effectiveness or tell anybody that you shouldn't use medications to help you. But I do want to let you know that you do not have to rely on medications if you use the power of your subconscious mind. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, before we get into this, I did want to remind everyone that on the 31st of July, that is the last day that you can join the Radiate and Rise community for abuse survivors at the $22 a month founding member price. Now, just as a reminder about this, you can still join after this date. It's just the price is going up to $33 in August. So the benefit you get for joining in July is that you get that $22 a month price forever. That is your locked in monthly membership fee. Inside the group, I have weekly content that I provide tools and techniques, lessons, meditations, like all different kinds of stuff every week. And we focus on a specific thing to help you kickstart your healing journey, to help you take action. Now, you don't have to do everything inside the group, but there are lots of things to choose from to help you with whatever you might be struggling with, plus the community support and the incognito space that's safe for you. And then every month, I come on live on an hour call and coach you. So the first one we had was on the 26th. And it was a fantastic call. In fact, one of the women who was on the call that day, she sent me a message privately in Instagram that basically said, you are going to help so many people with this group. That was so powerful, listening to other people and where they are and realizing where I am. And this is going to be a great group. So I just want you to know that even if you try it out for a month and you don't want to stay, you can just cancel. So, okay, so let's talk about anxiety. And I want you to understand a few things before we jump into like the actual tools and how to help you. But, essentially when your nervous system is dysregulated, you are either in a fight or flight response pretty much all the time. And when you've been abused, right, the goal is for you to survive. And your nervous system then is trying to help you do that. So when someone has been, let's say, emotionally abused, physically abused, in any sort of abuse, and that trauma is stored in your body, right? Because of those traumatic memories, because your brain is trying to keep you alive. It's trying to keep you safe, right? So what happens then is your body is like your alarm system, because you're going to feel things in your body like rapid heart rate, chest pains, breathing problems. You're going to feel maybe tingling or buzzing in your body, your gut. You might feel sick to your stomach, whatever those things are, right? Those are alarms to let you know that something is wrong. Now, the problem is that your brain is really calling the shots here, okay? it's calling the shots based on that past trauma. It doesn't know that the threat that you think, and I put think in capital letters, the threat that you think is going on isn't actually a real threat to you anymore. Now, I'm not talking about if you are sitting in your house and someone is banging on your door trying to break into your home, right? No, that is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you're sitting in your house watching TV and you're having anxiety and you don't even know why, right? Because there's not an actual real threat to you. It's because your memories of the trauma are real to you right now in that moment, right? Because of what you're thinking about. Your brain doesn't know the difference in reality or imagination. So if you are thinking about the past or you're worried about the future, then that is going to manifest in your current present state in your current reality, okay? So those traumatic memories that you've had from whatever experience that you went through end up being stored in your memory, right, in your mind, and then also in your body. So that's why you keep having physical responses in the present moment due to these emotional and even physical traumas from the past, right? So there are lots of different ways this can manifest, and people will experience it in many different ways. The ways that I have experienced it are some of the ones that I previously described, like a rapid heart rate, chest pains, dizziness, brain fog. I've experienced lots and lots of different ways, like the tingling in my body, having panic attacks, things like that. So you may relate to one or more of these, or maybe other ones as well. Now, the thing I want to talk about is, first of all, how you can start to regulate your nervous system, because I think that's going to be number one. And then I'm going to help you with the mental processing of this, right? Because you can't really think your way out of anxiety, right? Because the more you think about it, the worse it gets. So we first have to start in the body. We have to be present in our bodies and help ourselves regulate the physical responses. And then when we can get into a more regulated physical state of our bodies, then we can start with the mental work. So like when clients come to me on a coaching call, I want to know how they're feeling. And if they're feeling dysregulated, we've got to do some breathing exercises, or we've got to do some physical somatic work in the beginning to get them into a regulated state. If they can't achieve that regulated state, then we are going to postpone that call until a time when they can be, because it's going to be a waste of time to try to do the mental healing work, the brain rewiring work that I do with my clients if they are in a dysregulated state with their nervous system. So I want to give you an example of this. I had a client who came to me on one of our calls, and she was completely dysregulated. She was crying, and she had something happen, and she was really, really upset about it. Now, I didn't know about this prior to her hopping on the call, but in that moment, I wanted to be able to support her. So we immediately went into helping her body get back to a normal state where she wasn't in a heightened state of emotion. And a couple of the things I had asked her was, is there any areas of your body you don't like being touched, right? 'Cause some people have, different areas of their body that they prefer not to be touched. Like some people don't like their arms being touched. Some people don't like their face being, I hate when people touch my face. So I always try to check in with that, because we were going to go through a few somatic, which means body, your soma means body, exercises to help her regulate her nervous system. So she didn't want, I think it was her arms, to be touched. And so her face was fine. She actually really liked facial touch. Like I don't like facial touch, but she liked facial touch. So we did some different exercises, some breathing. I taught her how to do lots and lots of different ones. Swaying was really, really helpful. There are so many different ways that you can help regulate your nervous system with somatic body exercises. And so we practiced a few of these. It took us probably about 10 or 15 minutes, paired with some breathing exercises to get her feeling more safe. Because ultimately, like I said before, when your body's reacting that way, it's because you don't feel safe, or you feel, afraid, or there's some sort of fight or flight response that has kicked in. And so it's important to start in your body, figure out where it's coming from, and then utilize the different tools to try to help you. So when you start, you kind of want to check in with where you are. And this is what I did with my client. Like, how dysregulated on a scale of 0 to 10, how dysregulated? If 10 is the highest, where do you put yourself at that point, right? And hers was on the higher end. I don't think it was a 10, but it was on the higher end. And so the goal was to drop it from 10 to 9, 8 to 7, 6 to 5, or whatever it would be, right? You don't have to drop it from 10 to 0, and that's probably not even realistic, but if you can figure out where you are, check in with your body, where are you as far as your emotional dysregulation, and then can we just get it down 1 point? Can we get it down 2 points, right? Can we get it down a little bit? And that's what you would try to do with these somatic types of exercises. Now, I do have a PDF that includes the different somatic exercises that I have taught my clients. And if you want that, you can just email me or send me a message and I will send it to you. It's just right here on my computer. I can just email it to you. Just let me know. But anyway, what we want to do is we want to get into our bodies. We want to breathe. We want to check in to see where we are on that scale of 0 to 10 and then try to bring it down, because you're not going to be able to really work in the mental space until you get your physical regulation down a little bit. And so that's why it's really important to check in with yourself and then reset as far as breathing and body work. Now, I remember when I had my very first panic attack, and this was when I was married to my ex-husband and my abuser. And I remember every detail of that situation. I remember exactly where I was. I remember exactly what was happening. We were preparing for like an Easter celebration at our house. I had 3 small children. I was hosting like 30 or 40 people, no, probably more than that, probably like 40 or 50 people. I had indoor work, outdoor work, food, grocery shopping, cleaning. I had so many things to do, and my ex was at the time not extremely helpful. And it was me shouldering most of the responsibility. And the thing that sent me into that panic attack was the overwhelm and the feeling of having way too much to do, not going to be able to get it done. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be good enough. There may be other repercussions from my husband at the time if things didn't get done. So there was this immense amount of pressure and a lot of overwhelming emotions and thoughts going through my mind. And I broke down. I remember I was standing in the kitchen and I started to heave. I couldn't breathe. My body was vibrating from head to toe. I was shaking and I felt like I was crying, and I felt like I wasn't going to be able to catch my breath. And like an elephant was sitting on my chest. And I remember just sinking down onto the floor and completely crumbling, and my ex-husband looking at me like, what the heck is wrong with you? And that was the first time that had ever happened to me, and I didn't know what it was, and I just kind of sunk into it. And I remember trying to mentally talk myself out of it, which did not work. It absolutely did not work. You can't really talk yourself out of an anxiety attack like that. And you just kind of have to wait it out and wait for it to pass. And that's what I did. But my thing was, I don't want that to ever happen again. Like, I want to be able to prevent the anxiety, right? Attacks. So today, when I go through this and I explain this to you, I'm going to help you so that you can get ahead of these kinds of things so they don't happen to you, or that at least you can reduce them. There's ways that you can manage your anxiety, right? That's all coping. You can take medicine for it. You can do breathing exercises. You can do somatic healing work. You can do meditation. You can do lots of things, right, to help mitigate your anxiety. But what if you could prevent it from happening at all? What if you could work through what's going on a subconscious level to keep you from going into those anxiety spirals or the triggering moments that cause that for you, right? That was what I was like, all about that. How can I prevent this? Now, back then, I didn't know anything about the subconscious mind. If this is the first time you're listening, maybe you don't either, and that's okay. You can go back and listen to lots and lots of episodes on this podcast, and you will learn a ton about the subconscious mind. It runs 95% of the show. So my big thing is, why aren't we working in the subconscious mind if it is running 95% of the show? Right? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to be working in the area that's only running 5% of the show, because that's like playing tug of war with 95 people against 5 people. You know the 95 is always going to win. So don't you want to be on the winning team? I certainly do. So that's why today I'm going to help you figure out what's going on a subconscious level so that you can hopefully try to prevent these kinds of spin outs, or to at least, at minimum, start practicing so that you can reduce them. A lot of people might think that anxiety is just something that you have to live with, and that you're always going to be like this. And I've always been anxious, even as a child, and da da da. And I'm here to tell you that is just not true. That is absolutely not true. That is a myth, and that is a lie that we have been told and sold so that we might buy into drugs or other modalities or things that help us cope. Coping is a money-making machine, right? The longer that you're coping with something, if you're using something to cope long term, you're going to keep going back to it over and over and over and over, right? I'm done with that. Like, let's get to the source, let's get to the root, and let's fix this. And it's totally possible if you use that 95% of your subconscious mind. So the brain doesn't know real from imagined, as I said this before, okay? So when you're thinking about something, when you're replaying a memory in your mind, your brain actually thinks it's happening right now. It thinks that that traumatic event is actually happening right now. It's the same way when you hear people talk about manifestation and to visualize the future and to visualize the dream house that you want and the vacation and the romance or whatever it is, right? Because your brain thinks it's happening now. So whether you're thinking about good or you're thinking about bad, your brain doesn't know if it's real or not. It thinks it's all real. It thinks every bit of it is happening now, right? You are basically replaying the story in your mind that has either kept you in pain or is keeping you at peace. And so you get to decide which one of those you want to replay. Now, this goes back to rumination, which I've talked about before on this podcast. So if you are thinking about bad things, or you are constantly thinking about things that you can't stop thinking about, that's rumination. And there is also a way to stop that using your subconscious mind. And you can go back and listen to previous episodes that I've had on that. But you get to change the story. No one else is thinking the things that are going through your head. You are thinking those things, right? So when it comes to anxiety, first and foremost, like I said, you can't work in the subconscious mind area if you are emotionally dysregulated. You are going to have to take some action to get regulated. And like I said, I have that PDF I can send you. There's lots and lots of breathing exercises that you can do to try to regulate your nervous system, okay? And then when you're able to do that, then you can start to reframe and challenge and be aware of all the thinking things that are going on in your mind. So I'll give you another example of how recently this happened to me when, and maybe on another episode you heard this, but if not, I'll just share it again anyway. But I had gotten test results back. I hadn't gone to the doctor in like 5 years to have blood work done. So I had my blood work done and my cholesterol came back pretty high. And I've never had like a reading like that before. I didn't know anything about cholesterol. I just knew it's bad to have high cholesterol. So I immediately started to have like a physical response to that. just to seeing those results on my doctor's chart for me. And a couple of days later, well, so immediately I started like changing the food that I was eating, and all the things that you're supposed to do with having high cholesterol. But another thing that I did, which was really not smart, was I got on Google and I started to read and I started to research, and I started to absorb very negative and fearful things about having a stroke, having a heart attack, dying of heart disease. There was a lot of things. I mean, if you've ever gone down the Google rabbit hole, which is what I did, those things were totally sending me into anxiety without like any obvious panic attack at that moment. But I was, how do I say this? I was like storing those things in my brain. Everything that I was reading, I was earmarking and filing away in my brain. Stroke, heart attack, heart disease, blah, 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 like all these things, right? I'm earmarking them. And in those moments, I wasn't like having an active panic attack. The next day, I was in the kitchen and I was cooking dinner for my family, and I had multiple pots on the stove. I had stuff in the oven. I was chopping things on the kitchen counter. And I moved pretty quickly in the kitchen, and I kind of turned to do something. And even to this day, I can't remember what it was. I don't know if I was going to get something out of the refrigerator or put something away or whatever it was. And as I went to turn, this almost like fog came over me, and I felt really dizzy, and I couldn't remember what I was doing. And I stood there for like 15 seconds or so. And usually like if you're like, what was I doing? And then you can think of it. It would not come to me. I could not think of what it was. I started feeling really lightheaded, and I immediately said to my boyfriend and my kids who were in the living room, I need to sit down. Somebody needs to go in the kitchen and take care of dinner. And I had to sit there for like an hour because I was on the verge of having an anxiety attack. I was watching my heart rate on my Apple Watch go up, 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 up. I was like so dizzy. It almost like I felt like I was buzzed or like had been drinking, but I don't drink. I haven't drank in over 2 years, but that's sort of what it felt like. So I was like, what is happening here? I couldn't talk myself out of it, but I realized later that the reason why that happened to me was because I had stored these fears in my subconscious mind about what was going to happen to me. I had even contacted, you guys are going to think I'm so silly, I had even contacted my estate planner in case I might suddenly die to change my will, right? These are the kinds of things that happen to you when you go through anxiety, and I am no exception to this, okay? This happens to me too. I don't want you to think that, these kinds of things are unfamiliar to me. They're not. But here's the kicker, okay? After I settled myself, after I got myself calmed down, I knew what I did. I knew that it was because of the things that I was storing in my brain and the beliefs that I had about what was going on. As soon as I talked to my doctor, and she was like, oh, this is totally normal. This is not a big deal. Like, we'll check you in again in 6 months. I was completely different. It was this overnight. I did not have any heart rate rise. I did not have any chest pains. Like, it was gone instantly because I knew that this wasn't actually something I needed to really freak out about. And so I just want you to I use this example because I don't have anxiety anymore about my emotional abuse. This was new to me. This was something I'd never dealt with before, right? But the work that I have done personally on the things that would trigger me in the past, I've already dealt with, so I'm ahead of those things. So when my abuser does things now that would have in the past created anxiety, I don't experience that because I've already worked through it. Okay? So here's what you would want to do. Okay? So you got your body regulated, we're talking specifically about like emotional abuse, that sort of thing, for triggers and anxiety about that. If you have thoughts going through your head like, I am not safe, I can't protect myself. He's going to destroy me financially. There's nothing I can do, right? These are not only limiting beliefs, but they're actually keeping you in that state of high anxiety. And so a lot of times people will say, well, you have too many limiting beliefs and you just need to think positive. No, you can't do that when you have anxiety. You cannot just talk yourself out of it. You cannot just say, oh, I'm safe, and oh no, I can protect myself. You can't do that when you're in a heightened state of anxiety. First, you got to get your body regulated. And once you do that, then you figure out what the thinking is. Then you think about what the thoughts are, right? So if you are believing things like, I'm not safe, or I can't protect myself, or I'm going to be destroyed financially, or there's absolutely nothing I can do, and I can't help myself, of course you're going to have anxiety anytime your ex or anything happens. If you get an email from your attorney or your kids come home and tell you something, you're of course going to have a trigger. You're of course going to be anxious, right? Now, if you're constantly anxious, if you have anxiety pretty much 75% of the time or more, then what I would say is you have to start somewhere, okay? What is the greatest source of anxiety for you? And start there. Because if it is your trauma from your abuse and the fear, right? Anxiety comes from fear, right? So the beliefs that you are likely running through your subconscious mind are fear-based beliefs. So what I would encourage you to do is get on a piece of paper, and in the middle of that paper, write anxious or write anxiety or write fear and circle it right in the center of the page. Then when you feel that anxiety and you feel that fear, right? And I'm saying like after you've calmed down from a panic or something like that, right? Because in the moment it's not going to be helpful. After you calm down, what are you thinking about most often that's creating that fear or anxiety? And those are the things that you want to write all around the page, because what this does is it kind of maps out your mind for you, and it tells you what's going on in that 95% lower part of your subconscious mind. So if you have thoughts like, I'm not safe, and you see that that's on there, then what I want you to do is start with something like that, and then start to challenge that thought. And here's what I mean. Is there any area of your life that you are safe? Anything, anywhere, right? Because you might be like, well, I'm not safe in the court system because I'm always being attacked by attorneys and the judge doesn't agree with me and my ex, is attacking me. So I'm not safe in the court system. But are you safe in your house? Like, do you feel safe in your home? Do you have security systems? Do you have a dog that can protect you? Do you have other ways to protect yourself? Do you have other people that live with you that might help protect you? Is there any areas that you do feel safe or that you are safe? And so it's what you're doing here is you're looking for the opposite of whatever it is that you've been believing. So if you are believing, I'm not safe, I'm not safe, I'm not safe, I'm not safe, of course you're going to feel anxious about that. And again, you're not trying to gaslight yourself into saying that you are safe if you truly aren't, right? That's not what I'm saying at all. So I just want to be very clear about that. We're looking for areas that you are safe. Just a few. Can you find any areas that you're safe? Do you feel emotionally safe with your new partner? Do you feel safe when you're with your parents? Do you feel safe when you're with your children, right? Find them, right? You have to look for them. And so this is what I help my clients do, because sometimes that neural pathway that says I'm not safe is such an ingrained neural pathway that they literally are like, nope, there is nowhere ever in my entire life that I feel safe. And so I help them kind of open that door up and say, well, what about this? And could we think about an example here? Or what about over here? And we start kind of dissecting this, and then they go, oh yeah, you're right. And all we need is just a little shift, just a little tiny shift, right? Because otherwise it's this big glaring sign that says, I am not safe, right? And that big fire alarm sign basically is keeping you in that heightened state of anxiety. Now, it's not just that one. There's going to be more. There's going to be all kinds of other beliefs that are keeping you, again, in that state of anxiety. The beliefs are what create the emotions. And if the emotion is fear or the emotion is anxiety, we got to get to what the beliefs are and start to reframe and challenge those and look for other possibilities. And this is how you start to heal yourself. So when I said before, if you have a lot of anxiety throughout your day, let's say 75% or more, what is the greatest source of that anxiety? I'll give you another example. When my daughter turned 16 and she became a new driver, oh my gosh, I'd never experienced this before, right? I did a lot of healing work on my ex and that, all the trauma and the gaslighting and the manipulation and control and financial abuse. Did a ton of work on that. I never had a 16-year-old driver before, had not prepared for that. So what did I do? Immediately, I start having anxiety. I'm on my phone watching her location everywhere. Where's she at? What's she doing? I see the little dot go on the street and then it stops. And I'm like, oh my God, is she in a car accident? And this happened for 3 or 4 days. And I realized, I caught myself and I was like, what are you doing? It's not helping me or her to be in a heightened state of anxiety when she's driving. She has her license. She passed the test. She is able to drive. I've been in the car with her. I know she can drive, right? There is absolutely nothing I can do if something bad happened to her on the road, right? Other than go whenever it happens, right? I can't be watching her location and essentially stalking my teenage daughter's location for the rest of her life. So what did I do? I started to think about what are the thinking thoughts that I had going through my mind when I was feeling that anxiety. I won't be able to protect her. I can't help her. Something bad's going to happen. She's going to get into a car accident. Why am I thinking those things? That's just sending me into anxiety. What if I thought something else? I trust that she knows what she's doing, right? She is a good driver. I've been in the car with her. I know that she's going to be okay, right? And I'm not saying that bad things don't happen, because of course they do. But how is it helping me to do anything if I'm in that heightened state of anxiety constantly? It's not helping me. I can't control what happens. I can't control other drivers on the road. I can't control if she decides to get her phone out when she's driving. I can't control any of that. Does that mean I don't care about my child? Absolutely not. I love my child more than life, right? But you have to understand there are things that are in your control and things that are not in your control. And the thing that is in your control is what you think in your mind and what you believe. And you have the choice. You get to decide what you want to believe. If you want to believe, and remember what I said before, that all these bad things are going to happen, your brain thinks it's happening. So if I'm imagining my daughter in a ditch on the side of the road, my brain thinks she's in a ditch on the side of the road, and then I'm having anxiety about that. And I've done this before in my past with fears of flying. So when I would be afraid to get on an airplane, I would just visualize the entire flight, visualize the plane landing smoothly, visualize myself getting off the plane, getting my bags, going to the baggage or the exit, going to my destination, right? Because my brain believes whatever I'm telling it. So why not choose the happy ending? Why not choose the thing that's going to keep you safe? Now, here's something I want to mention. Resistance to this is normal. So if you're like, yeah, but I can't do that. No. I'm telling you, I know exactly why that is. There's no judgment here. This is why you do this. The reason people have resistance to doing this and thinking in these kinds of ways is for many different reasons, but the most common reasons are because, one, they feel like if they are predicting these bad things, then somehow they can have control of the situation, right? So if I think about all these bad scenarios and all these horrible things that could happen, I'll be prepared for the worst, right? And yes, is there some truth to that? Absolutely. But it's a very, very, very slippery slope, and you have to be careful because you remember your brain is wired for habit. So if you are the kind of person who's constantly running negative doomsday scenarios through your brain, that's going to become an automatic for you. Your brain clicks on autopilot and says, this is what we do. We catastrophize, we doomsday, we think of all these horrible things, right? You have to kind of shift your thinking a little bit to, well, wait a second, just because I don't think of all the bad situations doesn't mean I won't be able to handle it. Doesn't mean I won't be able to protect myself. Doesn't mean I won't be able to protect my family, right? Yes, you need to get ahead of bad things. I'm not saying you should ignore that. But again, there is a fine line. You have to be careful about just catastrophizing to catastrophize, or are you doing it like in a strategic way? For instance, I tend to try to think 10 steps ahead of my ex-husband because often things will happen in our lives and with the kids and things like that. And I have to think, okay, what are the possible scenarios that could happen from this? And how am I going to handle it, right? But the difference is I'm not believing that they're going to happen. I'm just considering that these could happen and in a non-emotional way, processing that, how am I going to handle that, right? And knowing on a deep subconscious level that I'm capable of it. And I think that could be a big kicker for a lot of people is that if they are thinking of doomsday scenarios and they are, like how I was doing with the heart issue and stuff, right? If you are thinking about all these negative and bad things happening, are you doing it because you're looking for solutions, or are you doing it just because you feel like you are in danger? And that's the big, big, big difference. So I hope that I've shed some light on this for you and given you some direction on how to handle and get ahead of your anxiety. This isn't something that's going to be an overnight process for anyone, especially if you've been suffering with anxiety for a really long time in your life and you have deep trauma. But I can tell you that with the right tools, you absolutely can manage it. I've helped a lot of people deal with this, and I've helped myself deal with it. So the next time that I have a medical issue, right, I'm not going to be doing the same thing because now I know how to get ahead of it. Now I know how to prevent it from happening, right? It's the same way when my first daughter turned 16 and was driving. When my second daughter turned 16 and she was driving, I wasn't having anxiety about it. I wasn't watching her location because I already processed it, right? So sometimes things will happen that we aren't used to and we don't have the wherewithal to deal with. But when you have the tools like I have, the subconscious reprogramming and brain training tools, then if it happens one time, you figure it out. And then the next time it happens, you're good. So again, this takes practice. It takes intention. It takes effort. But there's a reason it's called rapid reprogramming. And there's a reason that I have a 12-week program, because in 3 months, you can make some massive changes to your life. So just remember, if you are suffering with anxiety, you have to get into your body first. Okay? You have to get into your body. You have to scan your body. You have to check in. What's the number that you're at from 0 to 10? Can you reduce that number by just 1? Can you reduce it a little bit? And then using breathing techniques, using somatic body exercises to help you regulate your nervous system has to happen before you get into the thinking stuff, before you get into the subconscious work, or it will not work for you. That's really important to know. So if you do nothing else, if you don't work with me in a coaching program, if you're not doing your own subconscious healing work, then at least practice somatic emotional regulation or breath work or breathing exercises to help you regulate your nervous system. Again, that's going to be coping, right? But at least it's something to decrease that number so that eventually you feel safe enough to do the work, right? Because if I tell you to start shifting your thoughts about, I can't protect myself, because that's what's creating anxiety for you, you're not going to be able to do it in a heightened state of anxiety. It's just going to be pointless, right? So That's why I'm saying do that first. And if you can't focus on anything else, then focus on that. Then once you start to get really good at coping and really good at managing that anxiety and bringing yourself down quicker and quicker, then you can start thinking about your thinking. Do that mind map, put that emotion in the middle, think about what you're thinking about, write it down, and then start to challenge those thoughts. And if you're doing this because you're listening to the podcast and you want some support and you're like, hey, I'd really like you to help me with this, just send me a message, send me a DM. I'd be happy to kind of help you work through it, especially if you're really actively trying to do it. Now, again, just as a quick reminder, you're going to get a ton of support just even deeper than what you get on this podcast in my Radiate and Rise Together community, which is completely incognito and safe. You can change your name. You don't have to use a picture. You never have to come on video. You're going to get weekly content and you're going to get monthly coaching from me. So it's $22 a month until the 31st, which I think is going to be tomorrow at the time of this recording. It's going to be Wednesday, July 31st, which is tomorrow. So go ahead and scroll down to the link in the show notes here and click that link to join the Radiate and Rise community and get in for the $22 a month. If you decide you don't want to be in, you can cancel anytime. But I don't think you're going to want to, because you're going to get a lot of value inside that community. So I hope this has been a helpful episode to you, and I hope you've gotten some good insights and tips and tools to take away. And again, if you need that PDF for the somatic body exercises, feel free to send me a message and let me know, and I will talk to you guys next week.